what we've discovered is the weakest link in the process oftentimes is the office's website, because more and more websites are being integrated with the operating system inside the office so that people can schedule appointments online. And when you provide that protocol, that interface protocol of the website software connecting directly into the patient management software, that provides a hallway just for people to access.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our interview with John D. Marvin. John is the president and CEO at Texas State Optical TSO. Over the past 20 years, John has grown TSO into one of the top 10 retail optical organizations in the United States, doing around $110 million annually across 10 plus locations and providing quality eye care for more Texas families than any provider. John, welcome to our Risk Management Show podcast today.
Well, thank you, Boris. It's good to be here. Thanks for inviting
It's,
me.
uh, it's pleasure to have you on our platform, and as it's kind of unique that we never had this opportunity to speak to this specific niche of opticians in our podcast. Maybe today it will be our first chance to discuss with you building leadership minds and personal growth, specifically in the culture of related to risk management, cybersecurity, and some of
Sure.
your strategies for protecting business assets.
Sure.
Sure. But before that, John, could you tell us a short story about yourself, your career path, and what brought you to where you are right now, and what you guys, of course, I know what you do as opticians,
Yeah.
but just tell us a short story about yourself and your company.
Sure. Glad to. Um, I think it's important that I kind of set a context of the fact that I grew up with a family that my father is a family physician and a private practice family physician in Western Kansas. And that kind of introduced me to this whole concept of private practice. My mother served as his office manager, and so we kind of had that small business family background. I went to university and studied marketing and business administration. And when I got done with that, I ended up in the pharmaceutical industry. And from that, after a few years of that, given an opportunity through a promotion to move to Chicago from Wichita, Kansas to Chicago, Illinois, that didn't fit real well with this Western Kansas boy to have to move to Chicago. So I began looking for other opportunities, and I ended up as a administrator of a large ophthalmology practice in Wichita, Kansas. There were 9 surgeons, and that was really my introduction into the eye care business. And through that, began to understand the relationship between optometry, and opticianry. And as a result of working with that group in Wichita, I met a very dynamic or enthusiastic entrepreneur ophthalmologist in Houston, Texas, who invited me to move to Houston and work for him. And so I did, and was really grew a lot in my knowledge at that point. And then after 4 years, broke off into my own business um called Marketing Management Group, where we did consumer research and marketing strategy. And one of my early clients for that was Texas State Optical. And Texas State Optical hired me to do a 2 year consumer study looking at their customers, their prospective customers, testing advertising messages and so forth. And we did such a base that when you do work to that extent, you become intimately familiar with the company, their strengths, their weaknesses, etc. And it was through that that I ended up um, working. I had a contract, took on a client for the franchisees. This TSO at that time was a traditional franchise, and the franchisees hired me to help them structure a franchise association and kind of give some consultation, if you would, to their marketing and advertising from representing the franchisees. And after about 7, 8 years of them as a client, they approached me about helping them acquire the company. And I agreed to do that. Um, and about two-thirds of the way through that process, when it appeared that they were going to be successful in their acquisition, they asked if I would be willing to come on full time as the new president. And that was
Uh,
in 2001. And I've been here ever since.
oh,
So that's what that kind of brings me to today in the background.
all right, fantastic story.
Mhm.
So let's discuss your kind of ideas behind the growing organizations because you have background in marketing and not a specific kind of engineer how to do this, but in specific how to grow in the companies and perhaps how to be a proactive business leaders. What are your main major tips in this case to grow a company just from individual franchisees to a large network?
Well, I think that I tend to do best if I can simplify things, and I would simplify it down to listening to customers. And in my organization, in my role, my customer is the independent optometrist who works with our organization and licenses our brand. So it's important that in order for our company to be successful, we have to listen and understand our customers and the nature of the business that is our business model. So we license our brand to private practice optometry. So these are young optometrists that want to own their own business, and they come to our organization because we help them we have a turnkey system of helping them with real estate, finding locations, design of the facility, building it out, equipping it, and putting all of the infrastructure in place that they will need to be successful. And then once that's done, giving them an operational guide as well as a marketing plan to grow that business and make it successful for them. Well, if you put a bunch of those together, then the organization's successful. And so I say it all starts with listening to the customer. And when I advise the optometrist, I tell them the same thing. You need to listen to your customers and who are patients, people that are needing eye care services, eyewear, glasses, contact lenses. So you need to listen to them and determine from listening what's most important to them, and then figuring out the most effective and profitable way to deliver that to them. And that's pretty basic in any kind of business, and it applies to optometry as well.
So it's kind of not much different from setting up a McDonald's franchise or kind of
Oh,
another.
yeah, it really is the same. It's the same process. When I had my market management company, I would tell people I don't specialize in an industry. I specialize in a process. And from that aspect, marketing is a lot like engineering. Marketing can be engineered. And if you take that attitude and that mindset of focusing on a process, then you can apply it to any industry.
Mhm. Interesting. So, what are the main major risks in this process of setting up franchise organizations?
Well, there are a number of risks, both in terms of fundamental to the success of the business model itself, but also exposure to risk as you operate. So fundamental to setting up the business is selecting a poor location. I mean, a lot of people make decisions around location not based on their business potential or opportunity, but based upon price. And
Mhm.
I think even then you can extend this to say that the biggest risk people have in business in general is making important business decisions based upon price. And because there's a difference between cost and price. And most people don't evaluate the cost, they simply respond or react to the price. And the cost of making a bad decision when it comes to a location is far more expensive than the price that you might be charged, paid, excuse me, the price you might pay for a particular piece of real estate. And so um, when you, that's a huge risk, especially to young optometrists who are not confident in their business capabilities or business knowledge and understanding. So one of the things we try to teach them on the front end is that difference between price and cost. Operationally, there's a tremendous amount of exposure uh, to risk as they operate their business. Probably one of the most well-known aspects of risk is privacy violations. And in the United States, we have federal laws. People are probably most familiar with it as a HIPAA law
Mhm.
or HIPAA violation, and it's all about patient privacy. And the premise of it is that as a healthcare provider, we assume responsibility for protecting information that would be considered private of a for a patient. And so you've got to make sure where as you look at that process of we gather a lot of everybody's been to a doctor and handed a clipboard and said fill out this information. Well, that information gets handled once you give them the clipboard back, then they assume responsibility for all that private information that you've just provided them. And how they handle that can result in either that information being secure or that information being very vulnerable to a breach of privacy. And there are pretty stiff penalties that healthcare providers are, have to pay if they do not provide the secure process. It's interesting, Boris, because the penalties are not for the lack, the loss of the privacy. The penalties are for the process that is in place that didn't provide security. So if you follow the governmental dictate in terms of the process, and the process that the government has dictated does not result in security, then the provider, the doctor, is not guilty
Mhm.
because he followed the process. So the ultimate concern here is not the actual privacy of the information. It is compliance with the governmental regulation. And so when we go through audits, we have to demonstrate that we are compliant with that regulation. And if we do, then we are protected from any kind of governmental penalty. But the
Mhm.
information itself doesn't mean the information itself is secure.
Mhm.
It just means the regulations were followed. So there's a lot of education that goes into that, both with not only the owner of the business, but all the employees of the business about how to protect that. And of course, and included in that today involves the internet and how that information is transferred back and forth between locations within an office, but also between offices. And so there's a lot of extra layers of protection that have to be built into that process.
Mhm. So this is kind of an advantage of opticians that are kind of connected to a network organization than compared to the the one individuals one that they have a kind of process that can they can follow, right?
Yeah. I mean, if some doctors out there all by themselves,
Yeah.
then they've got to take on not only the responsibility I just described, but learning what's involved in that, teaching their own people that, and making sure that their systems are compliant. And frankly, they don't have time to do that. So it's a big advantage with an organization like ours that we have these processes built in to that system. And so it's much easier to adopt a system than it is to create one.
Of course, also cybersecurity is often seen as a one-off event, kind of training. But how can uh, just practitioners, not specific kind of specialists in cybersecurity, can be we can be assured that they kind of provide what is required to protect their business assets?
Well, it's an ongoing process. I mean, it would be nice if it was a one-time event. But like every other aspect of now this interconnected world we live in, um, as much effort that's being put into protecting information, effort is being made on the other side to access information. And so we do regular ongoing training several times a year on updated softwares, updated modalities, and protocols that need to be adopted. Just simply reviewing the idea of, because now most every used to be, we went from paper files that were probably the most secure to in-house servers to now all that information is on cloud servers.
Mm.
And so that makes it even more available to breach and problems. And so you've got to make sure you're operating the best version of a software. You're operating the best version of any kind of security software that you use in conjunction with that, as well as testing your protocols on a regular basis. We recommend a weekly review of all of those types of software protocols, uh, screen for malware, all of that. We have a whole process in place, part of our operating procedures, to provide for this doctor to actually exercise those types of procedures to make sure that they're not through just negligence, becoming more and more vulnerable.
Mhm. Because data leaks becomes very kind of more notorious. So you have a target large uh, uh, yeah, company and also some other institutions. But I never heard anything that was leaked from opticians, but probably from the doctors' nets also some kind of such situations possible. But what are, in your experience, what are the major misconceptions in the field of kind of leadership strategies that provide your field of knowledge in this field?
Well, I think that one of the things that we kind of learned the hard way. Fortunately, we learned it early so that we could create um, responses to it that were adequate. Is that keep in mind these are small businesses, usually maybe with 8 employees. So it's not like we've got 200 people running around. You've got 6 to 8 employees in the house. And there's this naivety that goes along with that, thinking that everything is secure and okay. And what we've discovered is the weakest link in the process, oftentimes, is the office's website, because more and more websites are being integrated with the operating system inside the office so that people can schedule appointments online. And when you provide that protocol, that interface protocol of the website software connecting directly into the patient management software, that provides a hallway just for people to access. And I think another misconception is that a lot of doctors think that the vulnerability is to some 14 or 15-year-old hacker sitting in their parents' basement trying to get into their software. And that's not it at all. Hacking has become so sophisticated that it's done by other software. I mean,
Hmm.
it's actually automated bots and software that is hunting for these weaknesses with an insatiable appetite for them. And they can detect them when that 14 or 16-year-old wouldn't have noticed them. And so it makes it even more important that if you're taking that extra step, because it's not just some optician that works for you that's going to take a thumb drive off of your computer system and go distribute it someplace. It's going to be you're going to wake up one day and your system won't work because it's been taken over by a ransomware software that came in through your website. And now you're stuck. You got a whole day's worth of patients booked. You don't know who they are, and you have a message that if for only $25,000, they'll unfreeze that. And so you've got to really be careful about anytime you connect not just to the internet, but you provide another outlet that website is yet another entry point into that people don't even think about that. And so um, being aware of and learning those types of things from, it starts with us at the corporate level, and then we have to turn around and develop means by which to communicate that to individual members.
Right, fantastic. So, if we summarize our interview for someone who is listening and would like to walk away with one or two major takeaways, what would it be?
Don't underestimate the importance of certainly as when it comes to risk management, don't underestimate the importance of securing your cloud, making sure your cloud service secure, and making sure that your operating software is has got built-in protections in it and security in it, and then don't casually connect it to other. In our industry, we are notorious for hub and spoke types of softwares in offices. You've got a primary operating system that most doctors use. But if they want to send out electronic communication to patients, they get another software and plug that in. Then they get another software for scheduling and plug that in. Then they get another software for their website and plug that in. And pretty soon you've got this hub with all of these entry points into it. And don't just assume that every third party you're working with has done everything they need to be secure, because you'll do so at your own peril. So don't be naive, don't make assumptions, and take responsibility for not just compliance with federal regulations on privacy, but take responsibility for the privacy itself.
All right. So, that's all my questions, John. If I forgot to ask you something that you feel is important to our audience, please go ahead.
I can't imagine that I would come up with something that you wouldn't, Morris, because this is what you eat, breathe, and live every day. But I sure appreciate you inviting me and giving me an opportunity to share a little bit about what we do in the field of optometry.
Absolutely. Thanks again, and I wish you and your network, TSO, great success, and people to have good uh, this spectacles
That's
for the real
right.
life. All right.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.